All right, hello guys. This is Mr. G here, and this is a video for circumference of a circle. So hopefully you guys have your note takers out. We're following along, and let's get to it. Okay, so here's the vocabulary you need to know today. A lot of this might be review, but it has to do with diameter, radius, and circumference. Okay, so diameter is an important one, and it has to do with the circle, and it is a distance from one end of the circle all the way to the other end of the circle, but it has to go through the middle. Okay, so this is an example of a diameter right here. Okay, it has to go through the middle. That's the big part about it. If it was something like this, here, let me draw an example. So if I had this line, that's a straight line that goes from one end of the circle to the other, but it doesn't go through the middle. So that would not be a diameter. Okay, so your diameter, the diameter is important because we use this diameter to help us find circumference and sometimes area. We'll talk about that on another video. Okay, so the diameter is important to be able to identify it. Now the radius is basically half of the diameter. It goes from one end, it goes from the circle to the middle, but it stops in the middle. Okay, so this blue line here is your radius. Now again, the radius could be going from all different angles. I can draw multiple radius, but they're all the same. Okay, so this radius is equal to this radius, which is equal to this radius, which is equal to this radius. But the big thing is they all have to go through the middle. Okay, so they all have to go through the middle. All right, now let's talk about circumference. That's what we're really focused on today. We use the radius and the diameter to find the circumference, okay? So the big thing is about the radius, again, is the radius is half of the diameter. So if I know, if I'm given, hey, you have a diameter of 12 centimeters, then I know the radius would have to be 6 centimeters because that's half of it. Vice versa, if I had the radius, if I was given the radius, I should be able to figure out the diameter. So if I was told, hey, your radius is 3 centimeters, so there's the length of my radius, my diameter is twice that, because since the radius is half of that, that means if I multiply this by 2, it'll give me my full diameter. So then my full diameter would be 6 centimeters. Okay, so that's the kind of stuff that you're going to need to be able to do with these two things. Now, circumference is the distance around the circle. So the circumference is basically the perimeter. Okay, so it's how long around the circle. So distance around the circle. There's my weird drawing of circumference going around. Okay, so the distance around the circle. Now we can't just add up side lengths like we do with like a square or triangle because a circle's round doesn't have side lengths. So that's why we have to do a special formula to find the circumference of a circle. So here we go. These are your big time formulas for finding the circumference of a circle. They really are the exact same thing, but one uses the diameter and one formula uses the radius. So if you would like to, you can draw a little arrow to this and write radius. This stands for diameter. Okay. But to find the circumference, this is circumference. To find the circumference, we take the radius, multiply it by 2, and multiply it by pi. And whenever we multiply by pi, we use 3.14. And we can just stop at 3.14. I know some of you guys have memorized a lot of the values of pi. We don't need to do that. We can just use 3.14 for pi. Okay? So if you're given your radius, you would just multiply by 2, because if we go back to what we were just talking about, if my radius was 3, I would multiply by 2, and that would give me my diameter of 6, right? So if I take my radius, I multiply it by 2, that would give me my diameter. So that's why these formulas are really the same thing, okay? Because 2 times your radius, if I take my radius and I double it, I have my diameter. And really for circumference, all we're trying to do is we're trying to take our diameter and we're trying to multiply it by pi. Once you take your diameter, you multiply it by pi, that'll give you this distance around the circle, the circumference. Okay, so these are the big formulas today. These are what we're going to use. So we know that this stands for circumference. We know what pi is. We know what the d is for diameter. And we know r stands for radius. So here's the type of problems. You're just going to be given a circle. And you're going to be asked, hey, what's the circumference? What's the diameter? What's the radius? You'll be asked one of those 3 things. You might see circumference, radius, diameter. Okay, and we have to fill out all 3 of these. Well, for this particular circle, right away, we're given a value that goes all the way across the middle. So it goes from one end of the circle to the other end of the circle, and it goes through the middle. So we know that my diameter is 5 centimeters. So if I really wanted to know what if I had to know what the radius was, I could take that diameter and divide it by 2. Okay, so I can take my diameter and divide it by 2. which is 2.5. So I know my radius. Now when I want to find my circumference, I can use my formulas. Since I was already given my diameter, I can use this formula right here, where circumference equals pi times diameter. I'll just do that over here real quick. So my circumference equals pi times the diameter, which is 5. So I'm plugging in my value into my formula. Okay. Now we know that we're going to use 3.14 for pi. So really my circumference is whatever 3.14 times pi is. Okay, and now I can just do that work kind of off to the side over here, wherever you have room, like on your homework sheets or any paper you're working on. I would just do it off to the side real quick. Okay, so I've got 5 times 4 is 20, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7, and then 5 times 3 is 15. 1, 2 numbers, so 1, 2 numbers after my decimal. So my circumference of this particular circle is 15.7 centimeters. It is not centimeters square because it's just distance. It's not the area. So I'm done. Nothing else I need to do here. Okay? Let's look at some more. So now I have 2 circles in this one. You guys can try one on your own, try them both on your own. That's up to you. If you want to pause, give it a shot, see how you do. This circle we are given the radius. This circle we are given the diameter. So we're going to use our 2 formulas and figure out what the circumference is. Okay? So for the radius here, I know it's 8 centimeters. So because I'm given my radius, I can plug it into this formula, or I could right away just say, hey, I know my diameter is 16 because I take my radius and I multiply it by 2. Okay, but let's practice using this formula. So I know it's 2 pi r, right? So that means my circumference is 2 times pi times 8. One thing we always like to do, now I know the order is 2 times pi and then you multiply it by 8, but one thing that makes life really, really simple with circumference and with dealing with pi is you always multiply by pi last. Always multiply by pi last. Save it for the end because sometimes you don't even have to multiply by pi. Okay? So I'm going to do 2 times 8 first just because I can do that in my head. That's simple mental math, and we're allowed to multiply in any order that we want. Okay, so that way now I don't have to worry about having a decimal and then multiplying by decimal again. I can just go ahead and do 16 times pi. Okay, so I did 2 times 8. So I multiplied those to get 16. Now I still got to multiply by pi. And this is where I would go 16 times 3.14 off to the side. Okay, so real quick, what I'm going to do, you guys, is I'm just going to plug it into the calculator just for the sake of time for this video. So I don't want you guys to have to watch me multiply. And when I do 16 times 3.14, I get 50.24. So there's my circumference, 50.24. And the diameter ended up being 16 because that's twice my radius. Okay, and of course we'll label it with centimeters. So we're done with that one. This one right here, we're given the diameter. We know the diameter is 10. Once you know that the diameter is 10, you should be able to divide that by 2 to get this. The radius is 5. Now I get to plug that into my formula. Since I'm given my diameter, I'll use this one. Pi times 10, which is also 3.14 times 10. Cool thing about 10, so whenever you multiply by 10, you have a decimal. Just move your decimal over once, and you're done. So my circumference is 31.4 centimeters. Okay? All right, one more type of problem that you're going to have. Sometimes you're going to be given the circumference, and you need to either figure out what the radius is or the diameter is or both. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our formula to figure out what our diameter is. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to fill out this formula with the information that we know. I know what my C is. I know what the circumference is. Circumference is 21.98. Okay? I'm going to bring down my equal sign. I'm going to bring down the pi because we know what pi is. Okay? Pi is 3.14, right? Do I know what the diameter is? No. So that's my variable. Okay, so now I have a really, really, really simple one-step equation. Okay, since I know I have 3.14 times diameter, the opposite, I'm trying to figure out what my diameter is, so I'm going to solve for D. So I want to get that by itself, so I need to do the opposite of multiplication here. Since this is multiplication, I need to do the opposite, which is division. Because 3.14 divided by 3.14 is 1. So I need to divide both sides by 3.14. Then I need to actually do my division. Okay, so I would have set this up. It's 3.14, 21.98. So here's my, remember the top dog always goes inside the house. I have 2 decimal places, so I need to move it over twice. Whatever you do on the outside, you got to do on the inside. That's where my decimal is going to go. This is not an easy division problem. I understand that. It's 314 goes into 2,198 at the end of the day is what we're looking at. But I'll just tell you guys what the answer is, just again for the sake of time. And then no calculators yet, but eventually you guys will be able to use calculators so to make these a lot more simple, okay? But the answer is 7. So my diameter is 7, okay? And then I know once I find my diameter, I can divide that by 2 to get my radius, okay? And that's it. So when you're given when you're looking for when you have the circumference and you're looking for the diameter of the radius, you're really just going to end up dividing by 3.14 your circumference, and that will give you your diameter, and then you can find your radius from there. Okay, here's your quick math joke, okay, before I get out of here. Why does nobody talk to circles? So why doesn't anybody talk to circles? Because there's no point. All right, guys. That being said, hope this video helped, and good luck with the lesson. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks for watching.